proved it didn't have proper jurisdiction. So they sent it back to Turin for a retrial. But because of his political connections, that hasn't happened yet. So the fact is that they are claiming that Amanda Knox was not wrongfully convicted because they couldn't have a wrongful conviction in Italy. But then they're claiming that Magniti was wrongfully convicted. Can you imagine how much it took to prosecute and convict a prosecutor?
With political connections.
I mean, it's ridiculous. So anyway, that's just absurd. But what I'll say about Twitter and about what's coming out on the internet is that basically more and more every week there are more experts from around the world who are reviewing the evidence and realizing, one, the foundation of this case against Amanda Knox and Rafael Solicito, or Solecito, even though it's spelled Solicito, that the case around them was built on a foundation that is completely false. The fact is that they destroyed the crime scene. They didn't take the critical evidence the first time they searched it. They stepped all over it. They kicked it around. They piled it up. They mixed it together. That means anything that they had from one piece could be transferred to the other. And that is not evidence that can be used in a legitimate court of law. It should never have been entered into evidence. And the reason why it was in the first case is because the prosecutor hid all the data behind it. And then, in the appeal, that data came out, and that's when it was completely discredited.
Now, I have to address one other thing, and that's the issue of us being disrespectful to Meredith Kercher. What we are doing is analyzing a prosecution of a case. The fact is that she's the victim no matter who killed her. And what we're talking about here on this show, it's a crime time show where we look at legal cases and how those legal cases are prosecuted, how the evidence is handled, how the evidence is presented, and whether or not we believe somebody has received a fair trial. In this case, we don't believe they've received a fair trial.
Talk about disrespect. When people allege that Rudy Guede was actually on a date with Meredith, that's just bullshit. That is completely disrespecting her. That's his alibi. That's what he said when he brought Amanda and Raphael into this, which was obviously coached. If you read the interrogation, the quote interrogation by Magniti of Rudy Guede, you'll see over and over and over again where he suggests answers to Rudy. And eventually, after time, Rudy gets it and says, oh yeah, I heard Amanda's voice and I saw a silhouette of her going away. I couldn't see any features of her, but I know it was her. And I didn't know Rafael Solicito, so I have no idea who he is. But yeah, he kind of looked like the guy who stabbed me. And oh, it wasn't a knife like the knife that they described to him, that the prosecutor tried to get him to say it was. He said it was like a scalpel, and it cut my hand. Well, actually, the knife that Rudy Guede owned was a pocket knife with no hilt, and so when he stabbed somebody with it, his hand slipped down onto the knife, and that's how he cut it. We see that in thousands and thousands of knife assault cases. This is a garden variety, single attacker, rape homicide by Rudy Guede of Meredith Kercher. And the only way to give her justice is to put the right guy behind bars for good, not for 7 years. Right now, he's eligible to go out on day passes. After 7 years. Tell me he didn't make a deal with the devil.
I know.
Tell me Magniti didn't. I mean, nobody will answer the question, how did Raphael get 2 high-priced lawyers to travel to Germany to represent him before the Peruvian cops got there? How did that happen? Who knew that he was there? Who would actually want him to be represented so that he wouldn't talk to anybody, make any statements that didn't coincide with the prosecutor's case? I mean,
let's also talk about what DNA is on what.
Ugh.
I mean, we've gone through this on the show before, and you people keep writing, different people on Twitter who believe that Amanda Knox is guilty about different DNA being found. The bottom line is take a look at the videotape of the crime scene, watch people walking through different things.
Stepping on it, kicking it, piling it in quarters, unwrapping it from other articles of clothing or rugs. The fact is that bra clasp was found on the floor, and it was moved. It was kicked. It was pushed. It did not move on its own.
We're talking about Meredith Kercher's bra clasp.
A piece of her bra clasp. Then, weeks later, when they collected it, you can see they videotaped this process. They opened up a rug. It was underneath a rug that had been crumpled up and pushed into the corner with all the other evidence in that room. And then it was picked up by one person. And you can see spots on the gloves that he picked it up with. It was handed to another person. That person then threw it back on the ground, again contaminating it a third, a fourth, or fifth time. And then they photographed it, and then they picked it up again and put it in a plastic bag.
And somehow that's too complicated for the people that are watching this case.
None of that is proper procedure. None of it. Not by American standards, not by Italian standards. That is a violation that ruined that piece of evidence. That's just the basis of it. So how could Raphael's DNA have gotten on that? Where were those evidence texts before they went into that room? What did they pick up? Did they touch the doorknob that Rafael Solicito had definitely touched because he tried to get into that same room? If they had touched that doorknob, they could have picked up enough of his trace DNA to transfer it to that bra class with the touch. But that's only if it was actually there in force. The fact is, they blew up the DNA, quote, expert that they used in Italy, couldn't find his DNA on it. So instead of saying it's not found here, she blew it up and blew it up and blew it up, basically magnified the results by many, many, many times, far beyond the manufacturer's specs, meaning they're meaningless. Okay. And then to say I found his DNA here in this noise on the bottom.
And spare us also, we don't really want to hear about how other people agree with bad evidence. Okay, I mean,
if it was collected improperly, it's completely worthless.
That's right.
That's not the case with Rudy Guede's evidence or his statements. He put himself there. His initial, unbiased, unrehearsed statement said that neither Raphael nor Amanda Knox were anywhere near the apartment when it happened.
Now, also, you're all getting all worked up about Mr. Solicito's latest trial, in which you're saying he's thrown Amanda Knox under the bus. And frankly, he had a specific statement in which he said, and I'll read it to you so you hear it, I want to make clear that I and all the people around me, including my family, have always believed, and we still believe today, in the innocence of Anna Marie Knox. I don't really see that as ambiguous, whether or not he's putting together a defense that is more helpful or he's turning things around. That's a different story.
People don't understand the job of a defense attorney. And a defense attorney is to help his own client, period. And the fact that Raphael is now separating defense from Amanda seems to be a strategy here. And I bet you anything that the Italian courts are going to find him innocent and still go after Amanda.
Yeah,
we'll
because they have egg on their face, which is something that nobody on Twitter seems to discuss. The fact is that they put together a sloppy prosecution with tainted evidence, found somebody guilty after holding her without any kind of preservation of her rights. They slapped her around, they kept her from eating and from drinking, and then they got signed confessions. So
But they didn't even get confessions. What they got from Amanda was that she vaguely remembers, foggy memory, that her boss may have been in the room with Meredith. That was after they said over and over and over, you're lying to us, and if you don't tell us the truth, you will be going to jail for life. Raphael is testifying that you did it. You were lying, you're lying, you're lying. She was scared, and what many people do, and this is the typical scenario of a false confession, what many people do is they sign the paper to get it over with. And then, when they're free, they say, that was a lie, that wasn't true, I was forced to do it, and that's exactly what she did.
And I think a lot of people have argued that, so what, she signed it. Here's the thing. This is somebody whose constitutional rights in this country were completely violated, and even in Italy were violated, the rights that she would have had under proper procedures in Italy, and somebody who was kept questioned in a language that wasn't even her own language, which you all seem to just sort of sweep under the rug as if not being critical or important.
Right. People say that she was only questioned for 2 hours. No. They wrote down when the interpreter came. 2 hours into that is when she signed this thing. But they waited 10 hours, or 8 hours at least, before they called in the interpreter. They think, no, it's not in the file. Well, Amanda tells us she got there at 10:30 and left at 6:30. So there's a long time that went by. Anybody could write a different time on that damn statement. It doesn't make it when it actually happened.
And given the behavior in this case, it's that they haven't really proven themselves, the Italian police or the Italian courts, to be particularly trustworthy. So therefore, we can infer that most of this